Pennsylvania begins the 2015-2016 fiscal year without a spending plan in place after Governor Tom Wolf chose to become the first governor in more than 40 years to line item veto an entire budget. It is an auspicious start to a first term in office for him, as well as for first-year State Representative Kristin Phillips-Hill from the 93rd Legislative District. Representative, June 30th is a day that I'm sure you'll always remember. It's probably a day you'd also like to forget for what happened. While the budget bill was being debated on the floor, what were you hearing from people back home?
Throughout the course of the debate, I was receiving emails, text messages, Facebook posts, Facebook messages saying, you know, keep up the good job, thank you for being true, thank you for holding the line. The sentiment that was being shared with me by the people back home was, please pass a responsible budget.
And that's what the House and Senate did.
Yes.
On June 30th.
Yes.
Now, another important date to remember is June 1st. And again, it's not maybe central to the budget process, but it has had a very big part in the budget process. Talk about what happened on June 1st in the House.
Absolutely. June 1st was a really critical day. It was a very critical vote. The revenue package that was needed for the governor to be able to fund the budget that he has proposed was put up for a vote in the House. Not one single Democrat or Republican voted for the taxes that would be necessary to fund this huge increase in spending that he has proposed.
Personal income tax, sales tax, shale, everything.
It's everything. It's all the taxes that the governor would need to raise spending by $4.7 billion next year.
So essentially, there was not any House support for what he wants to do.
No, the vote was unanimous. So it was clear, it was unequivocal that there was absolutely no appetite for raising taxes to the extent that would be necessary to fund what the governor has proposed to spend. So that was a huge impact. On the floor, on the debate on June 30th, and on the preceding day on June 29th, many members stood up and said, you know, you can't spend what you don't have. What the governor is looking for us to do is to spend money that we don't have. And the response from the Republican caucus in both the House and the Senate has been to pass a very fiscally responsible budget that is on time, that funds the core functions of our government, that increases funding in education and meets the needs of the Pennsylvanian people in a very responsible manner.
Let's talk about the budget that was passed, that he chose to veto. One of the biggest complaints is it doesn't do enough for education. How do you respond to that?
I'm a huge advocate for public education. I believe that in Pennsylvania, every child deserves a world-class education. And one of the things that I've done since the day that I got here is to try and figure out ways that we can find that money to improve education and what we spend. And I will tell you, there's a lot of money that is spent in education that has absolutely no impact on the classroom. I have proposed a bill, House Bill 1119, that's a mandate waiver bill. It passed out of the House Education Committee with not one Democratic vote, but that bill finds a lot of that money that our governor wants to increase spending in education.
You and the governor are both live in York County, I should say.
Yeah.
York County has been short-shifted in education funding for years, as has this region in general. From an education standpoint, how disappointing was it to see what happened and what he has proposed?
What the governor has proposed in his plan for Pennsylvania is to not implement the Basic Education Funding Commission formula. There's been a hold harmless provision in our Pennsylvania school funding formula, which is what has shortchanged York County because we have grown. What the governor's plan is to do is to not use this funding formula that the commission has established and to instead use his own formula, which is going to drive school districts' funds to one school district in particular. It's Philadelphia. 32% of all education funding will be sent to the City of Philadelphia Public School District that has only 12% of our student population.
So that's 68% left for the other 499.
Correct. And you know, it's so disappointing, and it's really hard to believe that with our governor being from York County, that he isn't more sympathetic to the shortchanging of our students and our taxpayers over the past 23 years.
Finally, he also chose to put off, he didn't veto, but put off signing a budget or a liquor bill that is historic, a pension bill that is also historic for pension relief or reform that it would provide.
Right.
But that's tied to the budget also in a way. Could you explain that?
Right, so there's a lot of funding that's necessary in those two pieces of legislation to make the budget work. He has also said that he is going to be vetoing fiscal codes and the education code. So all of those things are essential to making sure that our government works.
The representative's contact information will be shown on the screen in a few seconds. If you have questions or comments about this or any other legislative issue. I'm Scott Little. This has been Legislative Report with your State Representative Kristin Phillips-Hill.